What if I told you that the only thing standing between you and the life you desire is a single habit of thought? What if the delay, the struggle, the fear, and the uncertainty are not being created by the world around you, but by the assumptions you continue to accept within yourself? Most people spend their lives waiting for proof before they believe. They wait for money before they feel abundant. They wait for love before they feel worthy. They wait for success before they feel confident. But the truth is, reality does not change you first. You change reality first through the assumptions you persist in. Today, you are about to discover the game changing secret that destroys doubt at its root. Not through force, not through endless effort, but through mastering the inner world that creates the outer one. Because the moment you stop identifying with fear and begin assuming the feeling of your wish already fulfilled, life begins to move differently. Opportunities appear, confidence rises, circumstances shift, and what once felt impossible suddenly becomes natural. This is not about pretending. This is about understanding your true creative power. Your imagination is not fantasy. Your assumptions are not meaningless thoughts. They are the blueprint of your future. And if you can learn to remain faithful to the reality you choose internally, no external condition can stop what is coming into your life. So listen carefully, because this message can completely transform the way you think, feel, and create your future forever. One of the greatest mistakes people make while trying to transform their lives is constantly checking the outer world for confirmation. They say they believe in change, but emotionally they remain attached to the same reality they are trying to escape. Every day they look at their circumstances, their bank account, their relationships, their current results, and they allow those conditions to define what is possible for them. This is exactly how doubt survives. Doubt does not appear because your desire is impossible. Doubt appears because you keep giving your attention to the old reality instead of the new identity you are meant to embody. The outer world is always a reflection of past assumptions. It is delayed evidence of what has already been impressed upon the mind. Yet most people react to current circumstances as though they are permanent facts. They see temporary conditions and immediately assume nothing is changing. They become discouraged because they expect instant physical proof before fully committing internally. But the truth is, reality changes from the inside out. The moment you adopt a new assumption, the transformation has already begun, even if the external world has not caught up yet. Think about how many times people destroy their own progress by constantly asking questions filled with fear. Why is nothing happening? What if it never works? What if I fail again? These thoughts keep them emotionally connected to the old reality. Instead of living from the feeling of fulfillment, they continue living from the feeling of lack. And whatever feeling dominates within eventually expresses itself outwardly. The mind is like fertile soil. Whatever you repeatedly plant with emotion and conviction begins to grow. If you continually plant fear, doubt, insecurity, and limitation, those conditions become your experience. But if you persist in thoughts of confidence, fulfillment, success, love, abundance, and certainty, reality begins reorganizing around those assumptions. Life mirrors your dominant state of consciousness, whether you realize it or not. This is why detaching from appearances is so important. The outer world has no creative power on its own. It is simply reflecting the assumptions you have entertained repeatedly. Yet most people worship appearances. They allow circumstances to dictate their emotional state. A single setback causes them to lose faith. One delay convinces them nothing is happening. One obstacle makes them abandon their vision completely. But true transformation requires inner persistence. You must learn to remain faithful to your chosen assumption, regardless of what the outer world currently shows you. The fastest way to destroy doubt is to stop rehearsing the old story. Stop repeating internally who you used to be. Stop identifying with old failures, old fears, old disappointments, and old limitations. The version of you who created the current reality cannot create the new one unless a shift in consciousness takes place. You must mentally separate yourself from the identity connected to struggle. When a person constantly focuses on unwanted circumstances, they unknowingly give life to those circumstances. Attention is power. Energy flows where focus goes. If you keep focusing on what is missing, you continue experiencing absence. If you keep focusing on fear, you continue experiencing anxiety. But when you deliberately move your attention toward the reality you desire, something begins changing internally. Your emotional state starts shifting. Your reactions become different. Your thinking evolves. And eventually, your outer world reflects this transformation. This is not about denying reality. It is about understanding that reality is not final. The current moment is not your permanent identity. Circumstances can change faster than most people imagine once the inner world changes first. But the majority never stay consistent long enough to experience the shift because they remain emotionally addicted to the old reality. You must learn to think from the end instead of thinking about the problem. There is a massive difference between the two. Thinking about the problem keeps you trapped in it emotionally. Thinking from the end places you mentally inside the fulfilled desire. One creates resistance. The other creates alignment. The person who already has the dream does not spend all day questioning it. They do not panic every hour wondering whether it will happen. They naturally think, feel, and behave from a place of certainty. That is the state you must embody, not someday. Now, the outer world may try to tempt you back into fear. Circumstances may appear unchanged for a while. But your task is not to fight appearances. Your task is to remain loyal to the new assumption until it hardens into fact. Persistence is what dissolves doubt. Every moment you refuse to return mentally to the old story, you weaken the power it once had over your life. The old reality survives only through your continued attention. The moment you withdraw belief from it and fully accept your new identity internally, the process of transformation accelerates. Reality begins shifting because consciousness has shifted first. And once you truly understand this, doubt loses its grip forever. The greatest secret to transforming reality is learning how to feel the wish fulfilled before physical evidence appears. Most people live backwards. They believe they must first see results in order to feel confident, secure, successful, loved, or abundant. They wait for the external world to change before allowing themselves to emotionally enter the state of fulfillment. But this way of thinking keeps manifestation endlessly delayed because reality does not respond to what you want occasionally. It responds to who you consistently assume yourself to be internally. The law of assumption works through identity, not desire alone. Wanting something is not enough. Hoping for something is not enough. Even praying for something while internally feeling separated from it keeps the desire distant. The true shift happens when you stop viewing your dream as something outside of you and begin living from the feeling that it is already yours. That inner assumption becomes the seed of future reality. Most people struggle because they are emotionally addicted to waiting. They constantly look for signs, evidence, movement, and validation from the outer world. Every day they ask, is it happening yet? But hidden inside that question is the assumption that it has not happened. That assumption of absence keeps reproducing more waiting. The mind always expresses what it accepts as true. If you continue accepting separation, delay, and uncertainty internally, life reflects those conditions back to you. To assume the wish fulfilled means mentally entering the reality you desire before your physical senses confirm it. It means thinking from the end instead of thinking of the end. There is a powerful difference between imagining your desire as far away and imagining yourself already living it now. One creates longing, the other creates embodiment. For example, a person seeking financial freedom often keeps affirming wealth while internally feeling worried, desperate, and insecure. They continue identifying as someone who lacks money. As long as they emotionally remain in the state of scarcity, the outer world continues reflecting scarcity back to them. But the moment they begin assuming the identity of someone who is already secure, already supported, and already abundant, their consciousness changes. And when consciousness changes, reality must eventually follow. This principle applies to every area of life. A person desiring love must stop identifying as abandoned or unwanted. A person seeking success must stop seeing themselves as unlucky or incapable. A person wanting peace must stop internally rehearsing fear and chaos. The outer world can only mirror the assumptions held consistently within. The challenge for most people is that appearances seem so convincing. Physical reality feels solid and permanent, so they allow current conditions to overpower imagination. But imagination is the true creative force. The outer world is only the final expression of inner assumptions. If you continue reacting emotionally to appearances, you keep recreating them. But when you remain faithful to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even while circumstances appear unchanged, you begin activating a new reality. This does not mean pretending emotionally in a forced or artificial way. It means gently returning yourself to the state of fulfillment over and over again until it becomes natural. At first, the mind may resist because it has been conditioned to identify with limitation for so long. Doubt may appear, fear may arise, but persistence is what changes identity. Every time you redirect your thoughts toward the fulfilled version of yourself, you weaken the old state and strengthen the new one. One of the most powerful ways to assume the wish fulfilled is through inner conversations. Listen carefully to the thoughts you repeat every day. Are they aligned with the version of yourself who already has the desire? Or are they filled with fear, frustration, and limitation? Your dominant inner dialogue is shaping your future, whether you notice it or not. If you were already living your desired reality, your thoughts would naturally sound different. You would think with more confidence, more gratitude, more peace, and more certainty. That is the mental atmosphere you must begin cultivating now. Not after manifestation appears, but before it appears. The outer world is always catching up to the inner world. This is why patience and persistence are essential. Seeds planted in the ground do not bloom overnight, but the moment the seed is planted, growth has already begun beneath the surface. In the same way, the moment you successfully assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, reality begins reorganizing itself around that assumption, even if you cannot yet see visible proof. Stop measuring progress by appearances alone. Measure progress by your inner transformation. Are you thinking differently, feeling differently, reacting differently, becoming more certain internally? Those are signs that consciousness is shifting. And once consciousness changes, manifestation becomes inevitable. The person who masters this principle no longer lives in constant doubt. They no longer panic because circumstances appear delayed. They understand that reality must eventually conform to the dominant assumption held within. So they remain loyal to the fulfilled state regardless of temporary appearances. And that is the true game changer. The moment you stop waiting for evidence and begin assuming the wish fulfilled now, you activate the creative power that transforms your entire life. Every moment of the day, whether you realize it or not, you are engaged in inner conversations. You are constantly speaking to yourself internally, replaying scenes in your mind, imagining outcomes, reacting to situations, and silently defining who you believe yourself to be. Most people underestimate the power of these inner conversations because they seem invisible and harmless. But the truth is, your inner dialogue is shaping your entire reality. The words you repeatedly whisper within eventually become the experiences you encounter outside. Many people want to change their lives while continuing to speak internally from fear, limitation, frustration, and defeat. They affirm success outwardly while inwardly saying, "Nothing ever works for me." They desire love while internally repeating, "I'm not wanted." They dream of abundance while constantly thinking, "I never have enough." These hidden conversations become assumptions, and those assumptions are projected outward into daily life. Your outer world is not randomly formed. It is the echo of your dominant internal state. Life mirrors the story you consistently tell yourself. If your inner conversations are filled with worry, rejection, insecurity, and failure, your experiences begin reflecting those emotional patterns back to you. But when your internal dialogue changes, reality slowly begins shifting in response. Most people spend their lives reacting to the outer world without realizing the outer world first came from within them. They believe circumstances are controlling their thoughts, when in truth their thoughts are continuously recreating circumstances. A person who constantly expects disappointment usually experiences it. A person who expects struggle continues finding obstacles everywhere. Meanwhile, someone who internally identifies with confidence, success, and certainty naturally attracts experiences aligned with those assumptions. The mind does not simply respond to spoken affirmations repeated mechanically. It responds to the emotional conversations you genuinely accept as true. This is why inner conversations are so powerful. They reveal your dominant identity. They expose what you truly believe about yourself, life, and your future. Imagine someone who desires financial success, but spends hours mentally arguing with bills, worrying about the future, and expecting failure. Even if they occasionally speak positive words, their dominant inner state remains rooted in fear. The subconscious mind accepts the repeated emotional conversation as truth and continues expressing similar conditions outwardly. On the other hand, a person who begins internally speaking from abundance starts changing their relationship with reality. They think differently. They react differently. They carry themselves differently. And over time, life reflects this transformation. Inner conversations are creative acts. Every time you replay an argument mentally, you strengthen conflict. Every time you imagine rejection, you strengthen separation. Every time you rehearse failure, you deepen the identity connected to limitation. Most people are unconsciously manifesting unwanted experiences because they spend more time mentally feeding fear than fulfillment. This is why mental discipline is essential. You cannot allow random fear-based thoughts to dominate your consciousness all day and expect peace externally. You cannot continuously criticize yourself internally and expect confidence to appear naturally in your outer world. The conversations you repeatedly entertain become the blueprint of future reality. One of the fastest ways to transform your life is to intentionally change the way you speak within yourself. Begin creating inner conversations that align with the reality you desire. If you desire success, start internally hearing congratulations, achievement, and victory. If you desire love, begin feeling chosen, valued, and appreciated internally. If you desire peace, stop mentally rehearsing chaos and begin embodying calm certainty. At first, this may feel unnatural because the mind has been conditioned by years of negative repetition. Old assumptions may try to pull you back into fear. The outer world may temporarily appear unchanged, but persistence in the new inner conversation is what eventually changes identity. And when identity changes, reality changes automatically. Most people do not realize that imagination is always active. Even when they worry, they are imagining. Even when they fear, they are mentally creating scenes. The problem is not imagination itself. The problem is that imagination is often being used unconsciously against them. Once you become aware of this, you gain the power to redirect your mind intentionally. Instead of imagining worst-case scenarios, begin imagining fulfilled desires. Instead of internally replaying painful memories, begin creating new mental experiences aligned with your chosen future. Feel the emotions of the reality you want before it physically appears. Speak inwardly as the version of yourself who already possesses the desire. The subconscious mind accepts repeated emotional impressions as reality. It does not distinguish between what is physically happening and what is vividly experienced internally. This is why consistent inner conversations eventually harden into fact. The world outside becomes a mirror of the world within. If you truly want to destroy doubt forever, pay attention to your internal speech. Your inner conversations are either building your future or weakening it. Every thought repeated with feeling becomes part of your identity. Every assumption accepted internally becomes a command to reality. The person who masters their inner dialogue masters their life. Because once your internal world becomes aligned with certainty, fulfillment, and belief, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. One of the most powerful truths about the law of assumption is that reality does not change because of one emotional moment. Reality changes because of persistent assumption. Many people become excited for a day or two after learning about manifestation. They feel inspired, hopeful, and confident temporarily. But the moment circumstances appear unchanged, they fall back into fear, doubt, frustration, and impatience. This is why so many people quit before experiencing transformation. They do not persist long enough in the new state of consciousness. Persistence is the bridge between imagination and physical reality. It is the ability to remain faithful to your chosen assumption, regardless of what the outer world currently shows you. Most people think manifestation is about forcing reality through effort, struggle, or endless action. But true transformation happens internally first. The outer world shifts only after the new assumption becomes dominant within consciousness. Every reality begins as an assumption repeated consistently. The life you are living right now is the result of thoughts, beliefs, emotional patterns, and identities you have accepted over time. Whether positive or negative, your assumptions eventually solidified into visible experiences. If you have spent years assuming struggle, rejection, fear, or limitation, those conditions naturally became part of your outer world. But the beautiful truth is that assumptions can be changed. And when assumptions change persistently, reality itself begins to reorganize. The challenge is that most people become emotionally controlled by appearances. They start assuming a new reality internally, but after a few days they begin checking for evidence. When they do not immediately see movement, doubt enters the mind. They start questioning whether the process is working. They become discouraged because the physical world has not instantly mirrored the inner shift. But reality is like a shadow. It follows consciousness. It does not lead it. Imagine planting a seed into the ground and then digging it up every day to check whether it is growing. That constant interruption would prevent natural growth. In the same way, constantly doubting your assumption weakens the new state you are trying to establish. Persistence means trusting the unseen process even before visible confirmation appears. The person who truly understands this principle no longer reacts emotionally to temporary circumstances. They understand that the outer world is delayed evidence of previous assumptions. Instead of panicking when they encounter setbacks, they remain loyal to the identity they have chosen internally. They continue thinking from the fulfilled desire rather than returning to old patterns of fear. Persistence is not about forcing yourself to feel perfect every second of the day. It is about gently returning to the desired state whenever the mind wanders back into doubt. Old assumptions may still appear because the mind has been conditioned for years. Fear-based thinking may occasionally rise to the surface. But each time you redirect yourself back to certainty, you strengthen the new identity and weaken the old one. Most people underestimate how powerful repeated thoughts become over time. A single thought may not seem significant, but thoughts repeated daily create emotional states, identities, and behaviors. Eventually, those internal patterns harden into physical experiences. This is why persistence matters so much. You are not trying to change one moment. You are changing an entire state of consciousness. A person who persists in assuming abundance eventually stops thinking like someone who lacks. A person who persists in assuming love eventually stops identifying with rejection. A person who persists in assuming success eventually stops expecting failure. Their inner world changes first, and then the outer world begins reflecting this transformation naturally. The outer world may test your persistence. Circumstances may temporarily appear opposite to your desire. Delays may occur. Unexpected challenges may arise. But these moments are not proof of failure. They are opportunities to remain faithful to the new assumption. Every time you refuse to return mentally to the old story, you are rewriting your future. Many people give up right before breakthrough because they allow temporary appearances to overpower inner conviction. They assume nothing is happening simply because they cannot yet see evidence. But some of the most powerful changes occur beneath the surface before visible manifestation appears. Reality is constantly rearranging itself according to your dominant state of consciousness, even when you cannot perceive it immediately. Persistence also develops inner stability. Instead of being emotionally tossed around by every circumstance, you begin anchoring yourself in certainty. You stop depending on external validation for confidence. You stop allowing temporary setbacks to define your identity. You become inwardly secure because your faith is no longer based on appearances. It is based on conscious assumption. The moment persistence becomes natural, doubt loses its power. You no longer need constant reassurance because you understand the law operating behind reality. You know that sustained inner conviction eventually expresses itself outwardly. The outer world must conform because consciousness is the true creative force. So persist in the new assumption even when the evidence is invisible. Persist when circumstances appear unchanged. Persist when fear tries to return. Persist until the new identity feels more natural than the old one. Because the reality you desire is not created through occasional belief. It is created through unwavering persistence in the assumption that it is already yours. There is a hidden power behind every manifestation, every transformation, and every extraordinary change in life. It is not effort alone. It is not endless techniques. It is not struggle, pressure, or forcing reality to move. The true secret power is the feeling of certainty. The moment a person becomes inwardly certain, reality begins shifting in ways that often seem impossible to explain. Certainty changes the way you think, the way you feel, the way you react, and ultimately the experiences you attract into your life. Most people spend their lives trapped in emotional instability because they allow the outer world to determine their inner state. When circumstances are good, they feel hopeful. When circumstances are difficult, they feel defeated. Their emotions constantly rise and fall based on appearances. But the person who understands the law of assumption develops a different kind of power. They no longer depend on external evidence for inner certainty. Instead, they cultivate certainty from within first, knowing that the outer world will eventually reflect it. The feeling of certainty is not loud or desperate. It is calm. It is stable. It is grounded. A person who is truly certain does not constantly beg for signs or panic over delays. They do not spend every hour wondering if manifestation will happen. Deep within themselves, they already know it is done. That quiet confidence becomes magnetic because consciousness always projects outward what it consistently accepts as true. Doubt weakens manifestation because doubt divides the mind. One moment a person believes, and the next moment they fear failure. One day they feel powerful, and the next day they emotionally collapse because of appearances. This inner conflict creates instability. But certainty unifies the mind. It creates emotional alignment between thought, feeling, and identity. And when a person becomes fully aligned internally, reality responds with incredible speed. Think about how differently a certain person behaves compared to a doubtful person. Someone filled with doubt hesitates constantly. They overthink every decision. They expect rejection before it happens. They prepare emotionally for disappointment. Their energy reflects fear and uncertainty. But a certain person moves through life differently. They naturally expect things to work out. They carry themselves with confidence. They remain calm under pressure because their inner world is not dependent on temporary appearances. The outer world responds to this energy because reality mirrors dominant emotional states. If you constantly feel uncertain, life reflects more situations that reinforce uncertainty. If you internally feel rejected, abandoned, or incapable, reality continues feeding those assumptions back to you. But when certainty becomes your dominant emotional state, new opportunities, people, circumstances, and outcomes begin aligning with that inner conviction. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is believing certainty comes after manifestation. They think, once I see results, then I'll finally believe. But manifestation does not work that way. Certainty must come first. The outer world follows the inner world. You must emotionally become the person who already has the desire before physical reality reflects it. This is why imagination is so powerful. Imagination allows you to experience the feeling of fulfillment internally before it physically appears. When you repeatedly imagine yourself already living your desired reality, you begin generating emotional certainty. The subconscious mind gradually accepts this inner experience as truth. And once something feels natural internally, reality begins moving to match it externally. The feeling of certainty also removes resistance. Most people unknowingly block manifestation because they are emotionally obsessed with how and when. They worry constantly about timing, methods, and circumstances. But certainty relaxes the mind, it trusts the process. It understands that reality has countless ways of unfolding. Instead of controlling every detail, certainty focuses on remaining faithful to the fulfilled state. This inner confidence becomes incredibly powerful because it changes your entire vibration. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become more stable. Your actions become more aligned. You stop operating from desperation and begin operating from expectation. And expectation is one of the strongest creative forces in existence. Even during difficult moments, certainty allows you to remain centered. Challenges no longer destroy your faith because you understand that temporary appearances do not define final outcomes. You stop reacting emotionally to every obstacle because your inner knowing becomes stronger than visible circumstances. That emotional stability is what separates those who persist successfully from those who constantly return to doubt. The feeling of certainty is not something reserved for special people. It is a state anyone can cultivate through conscious practice and repetition. Every time you return mentally to the fulfilled desire, you strengthen certainty. Every time you refuse to identify with fear, you weaken doubt. Every time you think, feel, and act from the version of yourself who already possesses the desire, you deepen the assumption within consciousness. Eventually, certainty becomes natural. You no longer force belief because the fulfilled state feels real to you internally. And once that happens, the outer world begins reflecting your assumption automatically. This is the true secret power behind manifestation. Not struggle, not chasing, not desperation, but unwavering inner certainty. Because when you become certain within yourself, reality has no choice but to mirror that certainty back to you. The moment you truly understand the law of assumption, everything changes. You stop living as a victim of circumstances and begin living as the creator of them. You realize that doubt has no power unless you continue feeding it with attention, emotion, and belief. The outer world is never the cause. It is always the reflection. And once you change the reflection within, the world outside has no choice but to follow. From this day forward, stop asking whether your dream is possible. Stop checking reality every hour for evidence. Stop giving power to temporary appearances. Instead, become loyal to the vision within you. Walk as though it is already done. Think as though it is already done. Feel as though it is already done. Because the person who already has the desire thinks differently, reacts differently, and lives differently. Remember, this persistence in the new assumption is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. The world may not change instantly, but the moment you change internally, the process has already begun. Stay faithful to your assumption even when there is no evidence. That unwavering inner certainty is what destroys doubt forever. One powerful assumption can rewrite an entire destiny. And the life you desire is not far away. It is waiting for you to fully claim it within yourself. Thank you for spending this time here today. If this message spoke to your spirit, take a moment to truly absorb it and apply it in your daily life. Your assumptions shape your reality, and the power to transform your future has always been within you. If you enjoyed this message, be sure to support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing for more powerful content on manifestation, consciousness, and inner transformation. And remember, the moment you change your inner world, your outer world begins to change with it. Stay faithful to your vision, stay aligned with your desired reality, and never underestimate the power of your imagination. Your new life begins now.